then too, Julie?
Yes, I was going to record it and then I'll take meeting minutes from that. Yep. So I just started. So, oh, we got one more.
So I was just gonna say, so
It's
this is
Robin. I wonder if she's having kind of in and out issues. Oh, did we just lose Cheryl?
Yep.
Robin, are you in now?
Hi, I'm here. I'm just having some volume issues and then I keep getting kicked out, but I think I can figure it out.
Okay, Cheryl is gone now too, so I hope she comes back.
Hopefully she can get back on, but we can do the whole, officially, this is a executive council meeting and we'll be very lax on procedure and we're recording it in a minute and we'll share back.
Yes, yep.
So who's the call in?
That's Trevor's number.
Oh, hi Trevor. Sorry. I can only see the ... or the asterisks.
Oh, yep. No, yep, that's Trevor.
Yep, that's me.
Sorry about that, Julie.
That's okay. I was like, oh no.
I know. You started recording and I got kicked off. I don't know what that means. Okay. Are you ready? Are you ready to work through the 5 questions?
Yes, let's go.
Okay. So the first one, well, the first couple, well, the first 3, or the first, no, the first 3 are really about council membership. And so one of the interesting things is you guys, councils are authorized differently. You guys are authorized through state statute, which I believe you call a century code. And in that century code, the governor and legislature at some point made a decision to identify some additional council members in addition to the required members that's outlined in the DD Act. That is clearly your governor's decision. Governors are authorized and they're the ones who appoint council members. So there's nothing wrong with that. We have other councils who have additional council members as appointed by their governor. And so if you guys choose to change your change the membership, meaning you can't change the federally required membership. That is a condition that is set forth in your council program by federal law. You would be making a council decision to recommend to the governor and the legislature to adjust those extra members. That nobody's going to say anything to you about that. That is your decision. There's nothing, but there, to answer the question, there is nothing wrong with members, extra members on the council, because lots of councils have that. Your code is consistent with the DD Act because it says that they're outlining just the members that are kind of the pulled out members, either extra or they wanted to make sure that public instruction member, well, the federal law requires you to have a rep from IDEA. So if this public instruction person does not represent special education, then that would be something you guys would have to make sure you had on the council. And then this thing about Department of, let's see, Julie, you're going to have to help me. Your DSA is or Department of Health and Human Services or Human Services?
Right, yep. Now it's Health and Human Services merged.
Health and Human, okay. So your century code indicates that you have to have 3 representatives from HHS. Of the 3, One needs to be from public health. Well, that's good because the person could represent the maternal and child health program, which is required by the DD Act. A second representative could represent Medicaid, which is required by the DD Act. And then you've got this special life skills center person that is required through your statute. It's extra. So you don't necessarily, when you're looking at your members, you're looking at what does your statute say you have to have, and then how does that complement what the law requires? So I did a real quick analysis of your membership. Those agencies in the state code, those extras, that's yours. To meet compliance with the federal law, you're looking at what the DD Act says. And the question is, are we in compliance as is? Well, Jack Brandt is the only person who can determine if your council's in compliance. He is your federal program officer. We can't necessarily do that, but we can identify some things that you probably want to take care of, which is what I did in that quick little analysis. So as it is though, Julie, I think your question was, do we look good now? And we have this, if we're supposed to have 28 members, then that could bring us some issues with quorum, meeting compliance. Can we get enough members to attend? Because you're looking at, I believe, around 16 or 17 citizen members. So, that's something you guys have to consider. But if your statute has been in place and the DD Act's been around, this version has been around for 22 years, then if we need to make sure that you guys are living up to what your Century Code says, plus meeting the requirements of the DD Act.
Cheryl,
And-
if I could, not a question, but just to make sure that
Yeah.
everybody's aware, your document, I didn't catch that you were doing the Title V and Title 19 under that 3 language, because DHS doesn't see it that way. They want their number 2, or our policy says CEO. And so the way it stands, when I replied and redid those numbers, we were at 30.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they want it to be the DHS representative, DHHS representative, and those 2. So that puts us at the 30 member mark, where we then still have to have the additional Title 19 Medicaid person. And so, yeah, and I'm waiting for a response back of when the last time our code was actually updated, because they did go in technically and change from DHS to DHHS, but nobody referenced compliance, like with the assurances in DSA, because in number 3 in our Century Code, it's actually referencing the National Council on DD is the reference, the Public Law 95-602 from 42 at 6,000. So it doesn't even reference the appropriate authority, and I guess, so there's been updates that weren't necessarily chatted. Nobody with the council, I think, was referenced.
I got you.
So,
yeah, and so there's ways to really work this so that you're not. I mean, I know there's a concern of growing a large council, and we do have councils who have 40 members. So I totally get it. Having a larger number of council members is really more difficult, and in a state that has less population of people, or a large geographical area to get around in, makes it difficult. Bottom line, your bylaws really need to reflect your Century Code and be consistent with the Century Code and the DD Act. so, you know, I know the bylaws reference that CEO and that you can just replace the CEO for 3 of the membership positions. But the DD Act doesn't really say that. So Julie, that is an item for Jack, because that may be a special circumstance, but you still have to you have all of those representatives in the state of North Dakota. So the expectation is that they will be contributing members to your discussion at the council. So I don't see a big problem with the code. Just speaking, you know, I do look at a lot of codes. I don't see a huge problem because the code is so broad and says you've got to meet the minimum requirements of the law, the federal law. So, okay. So I guess that's that. And I did provide Julie and Brittany some recommendations about, you know, you probably want to make sure that you've got, you know, the local non-governmental person as well as a nonprofit person, making sure that we've got the right makeup there, like maternal and child health, a person from aging, a person from Medicaid. Those are all very different programs and each has their own place. And so in order for the council to make really good informed decisions about how things can work and be improved in North Dakota, you really need those voices at the table. You know, we can certainly work with Jack and let him, you know, we could put a, you know, you guys can put a request in to Jack to say, you know, we really want this scrubbed, and he's probably going to come to, you know, ask TA to scrub, and then he'll review, and then we'll see where we can go. But I do understand, Julie, the issue on quorum. And so your state statute, the Century Code, says quorum is a simple majority of members. The bylaws, which are dated bylaws, say it's just half. So it's things like that that we really just kind of want you guys to just, you know, make sure that everybody's clear on what your quorum is. If you have 28 members of the council, you know, half plus 1 or a majority of members, we don't really know if it's the members present. We don't know if it's members total. Your bylaws do say of total members. And so that is a concern. So one of the things you guys could do is just do an attendance analysis to see if you've been having quorum issues. You know, do you guys, Julie, do you know if, are your members allowed to participate virtually? Or does your business have to be conducted in person?
We have had, since COVID, we have had members participating virtually, like a hybrid model. Who comes in person comes, and then virtually as well.
Is that still allowed?
Yeah, we don't have any rules that state one way or the other.
Okay, good.
And
that's a win.
Follow up on yours, the bylaws matching policy and matching Century Code. The bylaws also state, or excuse me, Century Code also states that the calling of a meeting and then the action that can be taken, and that's that contradicts policy and bylaws as well, because to do certain actions there has to be 2/3 majority or 2/3 of membership. There also, ITAC has put out several things too that talk about its appointed members is used to calculate quorum versus absent spots. So I wanted to ask your 2 cents on that. There was a document
appointed rather than
that.
Vacancies. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you know, quorum typically, I mean, you know, I think, and I'm not sure where I saw it, I think it's your bylaws that put the additional things that you work quorum off of, like total membership slots. If there's not a member in the slot, you know, that kind of goes back. What does boards and commissions in North Dakota say about that? If you have vacancies, You can't hold, this is the problem. You would be holding the council hostage on making decisions, waiting for an appointment, and that is something you do not control. And so that would be an interesting thing, because I don't think councils, most of the councils do quorum based on appointments, not including vacancies. Not absent members, but true vacancies in membership. Like no appointee yet. So that's something that you guys would need to explore and see what was allowable through boards and commissions. Boards and commissions is going to have some guidance on this kind of stuff. They should. You just need to, it's a conversation with them.
So would
And
it
I
be
don't,
in commissions that makes that decision versus like some of the technical documents ITAX put out on that?
yeah, we provide guidance, and we can tell you what other councils do, and we can provide guidance on what the expectation is for DD councils with regard to what your funding source expects. But we don't have a stick. In other words, whatever we put out, you can take it or leave it. But most of the time, most people want to know, what did the majority of councils do? And so we're right now doing a bylaw review of all bylaws around the country just to see what's most common. We haven't finished it yet, so I'll have Cherie fast track and see what quorum is one of our bigger items. But I don't recall, I don't think quorum, and I'll look at do you guys use Robert's rules? Is that
No.
your method?
We would. It's in our policy that we do.
Okay. No, most
Yes.
councils do, and you can be as informal or formal as you want with Robert's rules. I mean, this day and time. But it's really about, it's the minimum. Quorum is always based on the minimum number of members who must be present at a meeting to transact business. If you don't have a member who's appointed, then they shouldn't be counted in the quorum thing because it's of members appointed. So
I don't think
I
we've
think,
been working on that. I think, but
yeah.
unfortunately, we've had like Tom for DHS hasn't been, but he's not been counted absent. We've just been counting it as a vacancy, even though he's still appointed.
Well, if
And
he's
so I think we
absent
just need to clarify that.
Correct, but we count him absent at meetings, and we've been doing quorum on who's present. Quorum is present of over 50% of our council members. That's what we've been doing.
But we've also had the question of, are we at 23 or 24, or are we at 18 or whatever the number is, because of how the discrepancy between.
Well, that's been new. That's not how we've been operating. We've always done it with the 20 members who's present. So sorry, keep going, Cheryl. We got to get through this.
Okay. And so you do have to, so the number of council members is something that you do somewhat inform through that century code. However, here's the deal. DD Act is going to require a minimum of 23 members. That's just a simple count. Okay. The feds, when they review your plan, they're looking for the 23. The reason I want you to check in with Jack, Julie, is because you have a umbrella agency that would then occupy 3 out of the 5 agency slots. And I know that in the past, the question was, is that okay? Well, the federal government continues to evolve on this. They now say they expect those people at the table. Remember, agency people do not have the majority vote on a council. So that should never be a concern for citizen members, unless your citizen members refuse to show up for meetings. So, there's a way to make sure that I know you have to have certain numbers of people from DHHS on your council. Okay. But they all represent a very different area. And very rarely will, agency folks, if they don't want to vote on something, they'll just abstain. I mean, if it's too controversial, they're just going to step aside and let the citizen members then forge ahead. So we don't see that as a huge issue. But I don't think, to answer the question about just inviting agencies to the table, that would be, you're required to have members who have voting privileges. They have voice and vote, and they're listed. And so that, I think, anybody in addition, sure, invite who you want. Have everybody at the table. That's fine if you have time to accommodate those folks. But I think your concerns about quorum, there's also the concern about being able to afford 28 members. Okay, because you have to make some decisions. Something says, and I don't know if it's the code or your bylaws, says that you guys are going to support and pay stipends to people and travel. Well, is that all members or just citizen members? Because now we have to start making financial decisions, because your annual appropriation isn't getting bigger, and your costs are. So sometimes these kinds of decisions have a financial impact to them. So I think you guys, when you look at how you're going to meet the DD Act requirements, and then your extra members that your code requires you to have, that's where if you can fill those slots, those DHS slots, with the required DD Act members, then your number may not go as big. Won't get up to that 28. So Julie, that's, it's really the math. You got to have these. See, the code didn't say, except for job skills and life center, life skills center, except for those two by name. The code talked about DHHS. One had to be from public health, and then that life skills. Is that you, Kimberly? But and so that could be part of that. And yes, Veronica, I do have a simple little worksheet and a tool and all that good junk. Got to fill in the blank form too.
I sent out an Excel document based on her form. I can send out that form too, because that's where I got everything from at the last meeting when I brought up the membership and we talked about making changes to bylaws.
Yeah. So the bylaws, you guys as a governing body, your bylaws need to be consistent and support the code and the act. So doing more and putting additional restrictions like 2/3 of this to do that, and you probably want to honor the state statute there. When it says quorum is a simple majority, your state gets to rule on that. The DD Act is silent, so your state rule rules. And I know sometimes people don't like that, but that's the way this works, because the state has agreed to authorize the program to be active in your state and has given you a designated state agency. Let's see, who can you fund? Sister agencies. Okay. All right. I'm marching on our gender neutral positioning. So those are our DD network partners. So our sisters and brothers. So our DD network partners, you can fund, when you say fund, I'm assuming that you're talking about projects and activities of the state plan, not just giving them a wad of cash. Okay, because you can't just give them a wad of cash. All right. Sorry, Veronica. I know you're the P&A. You don't get a sack of cash. So You can do that. That is the council's decision. Okay, so the council votes and the council approves funding. The DD Act requires you guys to collaborate with the USAID and the PNA. That is required. You have to do that. We all know that collaboration does not necessarily mean the exchange of money. You can collaborate without a grant or council money funding something. Again, that is your decision. I'm going to be honest with you. We have councils that do not. They have a policy that says they do not give grants to they won't even allow the PNA and the USAID, or especially USAIDs, to apply for grants because they've probably been in the creation of the project and the think tank on it, and then they apply for it. And so that's a bit of a conflict of interest because they have kind of insider information, especially if they help create the project. But it's not unallowable to fund a DD network partner. But the DD Act also requires that the council is to make your money available to all subdivisions in the state. And so we like to tell councils, you know, look, do a kind of a review of who has been receiving your money. Has the majority been going to state agencies? Has the majority been going to nonprofits? Do you have balance? Are you bringing anybody new to the table? So, you know, in this day and time when we're looking at equity as a big issue with making sure our programs are, lots of people have opportunities to engage with the DD Council. You know, that's kind of where the directors kind of hear that a lot from us, just trying to make sure that you're keeping the eye on what's evolving around the country and then in your state. The issue about sponsoring events. So it depends. It depends when we talk about money. If you're trying to sponsor a fundraiser, that is a no-go every day. Federal funds cannot be used to support fundraising activities, period. Disallowed all the time. And it doesn't matter if, and this hurts people's feelings, and I know it does, and I'm sorry, but it doesn't matter if they're the best, it's the best fundraiser on planet Earth. The federal regulation says not with our money. And it doesn't matter if they give you time to share information about the council, because the financial folks who oversee your money say, well, you can do that without sponsoring an event. You can do that all the time. It's not as convenient. I get it. It's the same thing as buying gala tables or buying I don't know, or buying ads inside awards programs. All of that is not, it's nice. It's not necessary for the council to implement the program. So going back to cost principles is where we go. Now, renting a booth, now that took me by surprise, because if you look at the Code of Federal Regulations, it will say exhibits are not allowable. Then you start reading a little further. So it depends. Sometimes you can do that. It depends on what the purpose of that is and what that leads to. Simply buying an exhibit booth, it always has to be, you've got to be promoting not yourself, not necessarily the council, but it goes deeper, making sure people are aware of your programs, your activities, the advocacy stuff, or whatever you've got going on. So you got to do, there's a little higher level, but that kind of stuff, you know, it's always it depends. And then who can you meet with? Okay, so the director represents the council and works every day. So the director and staff usually is where we go here. But since, let's see, Julie, how much staff do you have?
So can we clarify that? I know that I've pulled up several other bylaws and policies too, because there were a number of questions from members that our policy says that the chair is the only representation and that the director acts on behalf. So represents the council and acts on behalf are the language that's used unless delegated otherwise. And so I know I have I think I have 12 other states' bylaws and policies right now that have similar language. And then I know Alaska has delegated a lot of their work to their ED because of probably issues and things of that nature. I don't know. They have full representation and authority sits with their ED in their current bylaws, which was questionable when I was reading it. Because to fulfill the consumer-led language, there's the consumer-led part. And so the council decides, the council votes, the council acts on behalf of the council's mandated obligations under the DD Act. The executive director in turn takes action, makes it happen, and then delegates to his or her staff to fulfill and act on what the council's voted on for the state plan.
So now I've got to go back to Julie and say, what is the responsibility when you look at your job description? What does that say? And is that consistent with, because honestly, when folks put the chair is what'd you say? The chair is it represents the council?
That says that our language is like a one sentencer, which is consistent with several others that say that the chair is the representative of the council. The chair is the ones that signed our DSA. Other states are the ones that signed the DSA. Other agreements, the contractual lies with the executive director. A lot of the agreements and the other things that I found, I can send you a whole list, Cheryl.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's where there's been like this dizziness because where, how, what. And so trying to put that down and that, so ours specifically says chair, and it could be from previous relationships and settings and things that we've discussed with how we've been in the past, but the chair represents the council, and that delegation to others per that, much in the same language of appointing this committee and that committee and things with that language. It has that the chair is the representative for the national council, things like unless otherwise delegated. It has, so that basic language. And I found that same language in several other bylaws and policies. And then there were some that were very specific on what the council does and how then the executive director carries on that vote, that activity.
Right.
And so, yes, it is representation, but it's not representation. It's acting on behalf of.
Okay, so typically when councils put the chair represents the council, that really is about like making testimony at the legislature, or it's representing the council on say, I don't know, a committee wants, some state committee says we want representation from the DD council, or and you want a council member, the chair could designate a council member to do that. But it doesn't, I don't think the intent was to have the chair take on the responsibilities of the executive director, because that's not reasonable. That's as a volunteer, that is a bit above and beyond. So the director, though, can meet with other agencies. They can share information. They're working this all day long.
That's acting on behalf of. That's not representing. So it's the representing part. And I'll have to send you, and I can send everybody else the language that a couple others had too. So yes, Julie would be the one because she's carrying on the actions of the state plan as voted on by the council on a day-to-day basis. So interacting, continuing on with those collaborative efforts, like gathering information and executing the plan based on how it's developed and voted on by membership. That's the day-to-day. That's the acting on behalf of. The representation from, again, other language was in that, so the consumer-led, consumer-based, so represented on other consumer-led committees or committees in city, whatever. So it's that multi-level collaboration with other state agencies and other boards and commissions and other entities for that. And so I found in a couple, and I think Oklahoma might have been one of them, it was really neat language about how the staff would support like self-advocates and citizen members in those positions or as council members as a whole. If, one of our self-advocates would serve on ABC committee representing the council as, delegated by the council, if they were unable to do so independently, above and beyond their support staff needs, council staff would support them in being able to do that, is how some language. We don't have the staff to do that though. So
no, and there's all sorts of little issues up in that one because it depends on what that kind of support that is about.
Sitting next to them at the meeting. Sitting next to them at the meeting, allowing them to be able to, contribute and have their voice heard, which meets the self-advocacy and the self-determination and support roles. Because if we're going to
those are local council decisions. Those are not compliance related. So that's kind of stuff. I think you guys, and I think I just saw something in the chat about clarifying what represent means, clarifying. And a lot of this is really just clarification. And as leadership changes, and then there's different expectations. So this is really about having a conversation and respecting the boundaries, I think, because Julie's got a job description. She thinks that she is too, and I pretty much can probably tell you one of her job duties is to cultivate partnerships and relationships with other disability related, and on it goes, because they're pretty standard. And so we also need to be, you guys as an executive leadership team need to really be aware of where these things bump and complement each other or bump up against each other. When you're in a place where you can share information about the council business, and I think like you've got this big umbrella agency, Julie's going to be asked, and you're running your contracts through the umbrella agency. And so I think I heard at one point, Julie, you meet regularly with somebody from the DSA. And that's not to make decisions about council work. It's really about informing and where do they need to press. I mean, are you getting your contracts through in a timely basis? Do they need to expedite something for you? Is there a way they can complement, whatever you've got going, whatever the council has got going on? But
and that person also serves as an appointed member of the council, there's potential conflict of having those sidebar discussions.
But as a conflict, I just clarify conflict, potential conflict.
Conversation wasn't necessarily relayed. So the deputy commissioner of DHHS is the point of contact for Julie's monthly reoccurring meetings. That person is also their designee for council membership. So meeting with the DSA, meeting with the number 2 person of DHHS, if that's the case, but if she's also serving in the role on the council as a agency member, many of those discussions that aren't DSA specific, there's the cultivating relationships part, the things like that. Yes, those are ongoing everyday conversations that need to be happening in order for us to do what we're mandated to do and have the role that we should have, because our council has not had the role that we should have in North Dakota. And the concern was initially, until we had follow-up conversation, was that those meetings weren't DSA meetings. Those meetings were going beyond DSA meetings.
Those
So
meetings are information sharing, what the council's up to, what projects are you working on? How can we take this project and share it with Voc Rehab folks? Great job. How can we support you in getting the word out? Do we do a public notice? That's what those are about.
but if that person is an appointed council member, those conversations should be being had during council meetings as well. What are they doing? What are we doing? What does our state plan say? What our projects are we working? How's it going? How are we interacting with these other agencies? A lot of that information would be learned by sitting at the table, attending those meetings and being on committees. If those conversations are only happening in a one-on-one monthly meeting with the DSA and the ED, then there's a lot of information that may not be coming back to the table during council meetings to have that whole council collaboration.
Well, it's kind of two separate things. The one-to-ones are check-ins. DHHS has had management change over the last couple of years. So it was Tom who was always present at meetings and shared on behalf of the organization. Then the last representative was Jessica, and she was not getting to meetings. She has since been replaced by Sarah, who we've talked to and said, we want you there, we want you at the table. And she has said, yes, I want that. I want to be at the table. I want to learn. I want to connect. So she is coming in December and she will be there. So it's also been a change up within the agency to get them there, but we have the person in that position that wants to be part of the council. It wasn't just meetings that I was having.
Yeah, I think we probably need to explore what the real is this a trust-based issue? Is this a do you think deals are being cut behind the closed doors, or
No, we just have the agency participation like that. We don't have the reporting back in kind of high level. We don't, the agency updates are similar to council member updates, little tidbits. We don't have that back and forth collaboration where we're actually contributing to the workings and the services and the supports across the state for disability related services. We don't have that back and forth and in a grander effort that is reflected in a lot of states, especially from DHS prior to the merger. Kim's very interactive, shares a lot with stuff there. Veronica's there prior to Veronica, Teresa. Our Center of Excellence is a collaborator. But even with that, there's not a formal information type report and or the back and forth beyond some of that. So the council's not collaborating on, we're hoping for major systems change coming up in North Dakota with waivers and whatnot. DHS has not, and historically from other information that's been pulled, has not utilized the council as voice of lived experience or otherwise to comment on or collaborate with for any systems level type work like that. So the concern with being the council representative for the agency, as well as the point of contact for the DSA, which is 1-in-1, and the communication that was discussed about having half-day meetings with all these other agencies that are on the council, not with members present, as a sidebar and things like that. That's information that's very valuable to the council as a whole and can contribute to us working towards having the role to, I just lost the language, to respond to and comment on and be a collaborator in state level programs and policies for disabilities in North Dakota.
So Julie, how do you inform the council of in between council meetings? When you do you do a director's report or something like that and share, like who you've had meetings with and where opportunities exist for the council to weigh in? Or
yeah, I was doing director's reports. I hadn't done it the last couple months because I didn't know if it was really necessary. I wasn't getting a lot of feedback, but we have our members, like Brittany said, talk at meetings. However, yesterday we just met to say we would like maybe a more formal back and forth, which we can implement. We were going to talk about on our exec team, but I'm not sure what half-day meetings in secret you're referring to, Brittany, because there isn't any of those being hosted.
No,
So
not
I'm
secret. That was Sarah's suggestion. She said a half day would be great, like a 4 hours or so half day to meet with you and her and Voc Rehab and Kim and Medicaid and all these ones when we were talking about all these people.
That was
Basically,
just
all
for
the agencies.
information sharing. That was not to take out of a council meeting. That was extra if there was opportunities. She was just trying to connect us further. That was not to take away from attending anything.
Yes, but if they're not at the table right now, that's where there's the questions of.
Well, and we were also working with Sarah to get them there. This has all just been a month. I mean, we're doing that and we're trying to do that.
Yeah, and I do think that you guys have to keep your eye on the 5-year plan because not everything, there's so much, and you guys are a minimum allotment state. So your plan is a little bit smaller and more focused than a $4 million council. So in really trying to figure out where you can make these impacts, the feds are going to want you to really focused on your 5-year plan. If other great systems change efforts occur as through advocacy and involvement, that's great. But the council has to stay focused on the 5-year plan. So so the investments realize an outcome and impact for families and people with IDDD. I want to get to the last little piece before we have our hard stop. The lobby, there's a question about lobbying, and so I want to make sure that you guys know what lobbying is and what it is not. Councils are statutorily required to advocate, and that includes educating policymakers. You guys have specific approval and authority in the DD Act to do coalition work, to educate policymakers, to inform policymakers, to advise. You have a lot of leeway. What you cannot do is tell a policymaker how to vote. You cannot tell a policymaker what their view should be. You can educate a policymaker about an issue. You can and you do not have to remain neutral. You can say the North Dakota DD Council believes community living is the end all be all. And it's the best thing for people with DD. You absolutely can say that, as long as you provide fair and balanced information. And that's what the regs say, and that's what the guidance says. What it also says is you cannot influence an elected official. You can't tell them with council money. Julie cannot go to her representative in DC and say, I want you to vote yes for council funding. That would be lobbying. What she can say is, hey, North Dakota congressperson, the DD Council receives federal funding, and let me tell you how that impacts your constituents' lives. We do X, Y, and Z. And, and she's not making an ask. She is saying what the council has done with previous federal funding. That is educating a policymaker. And asking people to collaborate on things, I know there's lots of different policymakers. So the lobbying thing is attached to people who have a vote. I want, you vote yes on House Bill 2. But then, asking people to, help out or join you in this systems change effort to, revise Medicaid waivers. I don't know that that would be lobbying. If we haven't really, is there an ask there? I mean,
How about
so.
writing bills?
Huh?
Writing bills.
Oh, writing bills. We do have a number of councils that do participate in or could, you're allowed to do some things at the request of. If an elected official asks you guys for a specific thing, and we do have, Aaron Prangley at NACDD, and Robin, you've worked at the White House, so you know this. What's the deal on that? Writing bills, do you, Robin?
I mean, if somebody is looking to you, I'm turning my camera on, sorry. If somebody is looking to you for language suggestions, you are able to do that, but you can't, because you're providing facts and figures about your population within your state. So if a group is working on a bill and they come to you for information that will go into it, that is fine, but then it's, ensuring that everyone votes for it. That's where you get into the wrong thing. But you're allowed, that's part of the education and the advocacy is providing information so that, things are able to have systems change. And if that requires a bill, then that's fine. But I wouldn't really say you're writing the bill, but if that you are asked for, what are your thoughts on this? How would this help the people that you serve in your state? Then, they're looking for your advice. But you do just need to be careful. It's all about creative writing and so forth. It's just making sure that the language you're using is,
But seeking a bill sponsor.
No, you can't sponsor a bill.
That's my question though, but that's what we have to do to get bylaw change or to get state century code changes. Our DSA is not willing to do it. The governor's office says they don't have the authority to do it. And so we are being told we have to solicit our own bill sponsors to write the bill ourselves to get our century code changed. So that's the level of just confusion between DSA's role, how we're housed in DHHS, kind of the walls we keep hitting with things. And that's just the overall big story. And then we do have some advocacy efforts where
I will make one comment, and then Veronica has her hand up and we got to be done in 5 minutes. Not all bylaw changes have to go through a bill. It could be administrative code or language updates. We were told that by the governor's office. So it could just, if it's a language thing, they can put that through. So it's not necessarily has to go that route. And we were told that as well. And Veronica.
Thanks. Just regarding if you need to update state statute for the DD Council, I mean, I guess I know some friendly legislators and would be happy to send them your way. They would likely sponsor it if you say wanted to change up what it says for membership or something like that. But my real question gets back to the lobbying piece. So rather than just writing legislation, what if there's legislation that affects our population coming up and the council as a whole wants to provide testimony? Now you say that we shouldn't necessarily say vote yay or vote nay. So is there certain types of language you suggest we frame our position around?
Yeah.
Or
a council does not have to be neutral about a piece of legislation. You guys can, you can go forward and you can say, the council can say, this would be a great piece of legislation. It will positively impact people with disabilities, and this is why. That is it. You cannot then tell a committee to vote yes for this bill. You can say, House Bill 2 will provide affordable housing for 57 people with IDD in the community. We know the benefits of living in the community, and this is how things could change. But you can't then follow that up with, if a legislator said, how do you want us to vote? That is not for me to decide. That is for you to decide. We have told you the benefits and how this bill will positively benefit people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And it's just that, it's pretty much, the council can say that they support they can support. Yes, you can. I think you can, Robin. Yes, I think that's in our education.
Yeah, you can say we support the provisions as laid out in the language because of the positive effects, or the council does not support these provisions in the language because of the disproportionate effect on, the citizens within the state of North Dakota. But you can say why or why not, but then you can't follow it up with, so please don't vote for it, or please vote for it. That's the lobbying piece. But you are educating them as to why a piece of legislation they are trying to pass is either good or bad. So it's just a matter of the words that you're using. So if you say the council does support this and we thank, because even after you go, like if you meet with your Congress people or state legislators, you can thank them and say, this bill is really, thank you for supporting this bill. It is going to, again, it's always about facts and figures, and the more data you can provide as to why something is good or bad, that really amplifies your education and your advocacy. But you just can't ask people, you can't ask elected people for money, and you can't ask them to say yes or no. But you can say thank you for supporting, and you can say we do support or we do not support. It's just a matter of please vote yes or please vote no that you definitely can't do. And it really also depends on your state. There are some councils that that have been council executive directors for years, and that line of what is lobbying versus education and advocacy, to them it's a little bit more invisible in than other states. So but to be really careful, you just can't ask for things. It's about the
ask is the problem.
It's the problem. You don't want to ask for anything, but you can always say thank you, this is why this is good, or thanks, but this is actually why this is bad. So you just can't ask. It's about the ask.
Cheryl, could you or Robin or somebody else send something to Julie and I in regards, like I have all the ITAC documents about advocacy and the ACL stuff, advocacy versus lobbying, but specific to council level changes when we have to go through statute to have those changes, not, in the future for other reference that way, because we will have, if it is something that we have to solicit, we would then also be asking them to vote for it. And going back to when you were here previously and fighting for an FTE, for instance, like it had to be written in, you had to advocate for it.
Yeah, but I think, this is where so here's the deal. Your state has some responsibilities here, because this is not, the state has authorized that a DD Council program be operational. So the feds are going to look to the DSA and the governor's office to make sure that like if this century code did not align with the DD Act, which I think it does, but
referencing the wrong federal.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I've got the right version or not, but so I just think that we cannot skip the responsibility of the state in this particular thing about changing a code. And that is why the governor gave you a DSA, and then the governor's office appoints members. So there is this responsibility. But Julie, you've said that the governor's office has already given you some additional ways to address some things in a code. I know you guys only meet every other year, so you've got to have some administrative remedies available, because they won't, the state wouldn't let you guys just hang out there being non-compliant if that was the case. But I think that's something we could also ask Jack as well. But I don't think, I think that definitely the governor's office has to be involved in this, because the governor has determined that there would be a DD Council program. The governor determined who would be your DSA, and the governor has determined who's going to be on your membership. So they don't get a free pass, I don't think.
The DSA, or acting as DHHS, not acting as the DSA, states that the governor's office does not have the authority to do any of that. The governor's office has also said that they don't have the authority the way that our state is set up. And so that was confusion and questions on my part and other members when we discussed. And that's just, that's for another day. Yes, there may be things that we can do with a quick administrative language thing if we're not looking at having, changing the membership. But if we don't, we do have to increase to 28 to 30 members, and we do need to do that quickly. Correct?
Well, I mean, your current code already says that. They just don't do the math. The current code, if you don't make any changes, those members are required. So.
Yeah, but we don't have them.
But we can work with
towards
DHS to get them there, and
Yeah.
then they're there. And
Well,
then
not
Yeah,
even
then
the agency rep. If we are as we are sorely lacking with citizen members. As we sit right now, we're don't have the appropriate representation. And so if we have to increase, then that's the gap. We need 6 to 8, what do we say, 8 citizen members, because we don't have the numbers for the 60%. The 40% or the agency representation, that floor is not in question. Yes, we need those extra people at the table so that we have them there for that collaboration effort, but we are nowhere near meeting citizen representation if we have to increase to 28 or 30, like as it stands.
Okay, well, I think what we'll do is we'll do a look behind here, and I'll visit with I'll reach out to Jack, and Julie, you may hear from Jack as the council's administrator, but we'll make sure that we have, because of the umbrella agency thing, we'll see if the ACL has any approvals they can do. I don't know. I just don't know. So let's do that, Julie. You and I can, Jack will reach out to you. And then if you want me at that table, but I can share, whatever. Yeah, gotcha. And I hear you, Brittany. We've got to, I know that he's approved your state plan. So you guys, your activities are approved. Your PPRs have all been approved now. All of that came in, last week or week before. So Julie's gotten approval on all of those reports, and what you've planned to do for the next 5 years. You guys then, the federal government's on board, so you guys have to do your side of the work in implementing projects, activities, funding decisions, that kind of thing. And I know Robin's got a hard stop, so we will, Julie, you tell me what we need on the backside, and you CC Brittany on everything, and we'll get it done.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you guys for your service.
If you guys, the executive committee, can just stay on for a minute, if you are available, Cheryl and Robin can drop off. I'm not sure if this is gonna turn off on us, but if you could stay for a moment. Did I freeze? Okay.
No, you're still moving for me.
Okay. I'm not sure now if we lost Kim, if we are even at a quorum, but I did open meeting notice that we might talk about one grant, because we had received, can we talk about this? We have one,
Yeah,
two,
we have 4.
3, 4. Okay. We had received that small innovative grant for the secondary transition conference, which is going on yesterday and today, that we had not approved. So officially, so not via email, if there's quorum here, would there be a motion to approve Rachel Krebsbach's application to attend that? She attended it anyway because I told her we wouldn't be able to meet.
Did you send that one out?
Yeah, that was out a while ago.
I thought the one that came out was from a gentleman from Fargo wanting to go to the secondary transition.
Let's sent it out. I can find it.
Is the Melanie, the Krabs, is she the one who referred him to you or sent it to you?
Yes, yes,
Because that's
yep.
not the name of the person on the grant.
Sorry, yes, it
Okay,
is for
that's
that
what-
gentleman. She had
okay.
sent it, correct. Yep,
Okay.
yes. And I'm trying to find, yes, it was that one. He did attend anyway, but she had sent it on his behalf.
And I think in email reply, you probably got a few that said yay to begin with. And then we held because of the questions we'd had on the consumer development. But our 5-year plan, like you clarified with Cheryl, too, matches that's a goal for self-advocacy and education and support. So I make a motion to approve. I think I can't remember his name, Daryl or something, or but it's for the-
Hawkins was the last
Yeah.
name, but now I'm blanking on the
Yeah.
first name.
I would with I make a motion to approve it. However, I would like you to reach out to ask him to further clarify how he will spread and share that
Yes.
information.
I did, and I can share that with you guys after this. I did get that clarification. Yes, so they will share it. I'll pull it up here, but you guys can keep talking about it if that works. So you make a motion to approve it?
I second.
Cheryl, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Okay. Sounds good. And what we will do next is follow up on some of these things with Jack and Cheryl. I'm also going to send out a meeting invite for us to meet once a month. So that'll be kind of a standing meeting, so we can open meetings, notice our exec team. We can vote on grants. You'll have the grants in advance, and then we'll set agendas. And then the chair, vice chair, and I are trying to meet every other week here for a while to keep things rolling with this effort with the bylaws and the memorandum of understanding and getting more participation with state agencies. I did call Sarah Stolt today and say that to confirm she will be there in person in December. And I reiterated, we really want more participation from our state agency members and to get them there. And she did say she will work on that. She also has been talking to the governor's office about our code and all of that, and she is working with them on it as well. So we are working on all these things, and just getting back to you guys, she did say she will support that effort to try to get the ball rolling on it. So we're figuring all that out. Another question was on council member stipends. If you apply for a stipend, it's $35 a half day or $70 a full day. Some boards pay more to be a participant in a stipend. So Jason Nisbet in the governor's office is looking at that and what that means for our board, because some boards have what they pay in Century Code or admin code. So I don't have that cleared up yet. And
Yeah,
then
code obviously, but if it's an admin anywhere, then accounting probably was referencing that. But otherwise, based on the document he sent you that you sent me, we're not listed, so we're not.
Yeah, he was just double checking to make sure there's no impact there. So if we want to up it, we can certainly do so. So he's working on that.
I think it's something we should discuss further to up, but after we figure out how many people we'd be upping it for. So that we can figure out budget wise that impact. And I agree, Cheryl made a point that was far back in one of my notes, but the reimbursements, I know many of the agencies probably haven't taken up on those reimbursements, but we should probably address in the future too. Reimbursements are for everybody, but who the stipends would be for versus agency member. I don't think we reference that.
We just have been doing stipends. We offer them to the members and whoever chooses to take them, which has been our consumer members. No agency person gets a stipend.
But we have to list it that way.
Right, and that is, I
Same.
think, got to be tackled in the bylaws updates as we're doing all of that.
Yeah.
Is there any other questions for me?
Can we tentatively, we'll have bylaw meetings, but since we have quorum right now for the executive committee to consider moving forward with a possible change, where we're at right now, if our membership does not change, if we stay where we're at in Century Code and whatnot, we will just have bylaws and policy reflect Century Code better. Currently, Roxanne has been elected by the council per policy and per bylaws, but as a consumer or citizen member, and she doesn't meet criteria to be a consumer citizen member anymore. So it is simply just a structural operational thing, but for Julie to reach out to boards and commissions to have her position changed to represent us in the nonprofit category. I would like to make, or would anybody like to make a motion to have Roxanne's position changed to represent as a nonprofit versus a parent of an individual, because she doesn't meet that criteria, as her child is a well-known, able to advocate on her own behalf. And so we would meet that criteria a little bit better. I think that's a simple change. And then if we can move on that, I would also ask if there would anybody who would make a motion to have, we'll have to address it with the council as a whole, I think on a secondary, but since we're not meeting till December, it meets that criteria that we need to make these decisions before a meeting. So the council elected Toby to be member at large, and the council elected Roxanne to represent as a consumer, and we would need to flip flop that as the executive committee. So it does not change the numbers on the executive committee. It doesn't change representation. Technically, Veronica is an agency, but she's a consumer representative, follows on the DD Act agency, and Roxanne is a nonprofit that supports individuals and services with disabilities. So I feel that that is still good representation on the executive committee.
So this is Veronica. I would make a motion to have Roxanne fulfill the nonprofit slot and also be the member at large on the executive committee, and move Toby to the other slot on the executive committee.
Yes.
Fill in the blank for me, Brittany.
The consumer. Yep.
The
Sorry,
consumer
that was
spot.
a long ramble. I meant to have it typed out.
That's okay. So that's my motion. If somebody would like to second that.
I was thinking that.
Thank you. And any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? One last vote, if we can take it. It came to my attention, it might not have been clear at our council meeting about discussing when we talked about our self-advocacy and health conference, bringing it in-house and budgeting money for that, but in that budget to include hiring a contractor to help us execute the conference. I am looking for a motion or a discussion if you guys want to make a motion to create a subcommittee to work on the conference, and B, if anyone wants to identify a contractor to look at for us to do the conference on our behalf, so we can get that cleared up, so we can move forward with conference planning. I thought it was Deidre, but I wanted to make sure that I don't want that to be something that was assumed. I want us to have kind of a clear vision and a vote on that.
So with the minutes reflected bringing in in-house, the minutes did not reflect formation of the subcommittee, but based on how things are written at this point, we had discussed that I can appoint those members who had already volunteered to the subcommittee for the conference planning. And so as the executive committee that we will be doing that, and we can send out an email to say who was already on there. I believe it has good consumer representation, and we can send out another email just to see if there's anybody who would like to join as well.
I move that we hire Deidre and create the subcommittee.
I don't know that we can move to hire Deidre, though. I think we can move to hire a contractor, and we need to do the procurement process, correct?
I don't think.
We could say with Deidre included in that procurement process. 13th hat. Like, because if you have to get 3 bids to include her in there.
Yeah, I would move that.
I would second that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Thank you. So we will move forward then, Brittany, or you can move forward with inviting that. We'll bring that.
Okay. I'll send that
planning
out.
committee background.
I also want to bring up for, we discussed in, Trevor, Julie, and I, yesterday as well, with potential membership changes, whether or not they do happen. We talked about the committees as they currently stand, and that'll be bylaw changes and whatnot. However, again, our language has the chair appoints all of the other committees. I asked that we included members' opinions, and so that's why the ballot was so long, because wanted members' input on who could and should serve on those. Majority of the outcomes ended up with kind of the same people doing the same things. And so I guess I just kind of wanted some discussion on, does the executive committee think we should move forward with those committees appointed as stands, or can we afford to table them and ad hoc appoint, because that's still in the policies, but appoint in the interim until we make those final membership decisions, and then have some stronger language about involvement of all members in different committees and actions and whatnot. Otherwise, it really ends up being kind of the same people as the executive committee, plus or minus, not considering the consumer development, where we had some discussions on all citizen members being a part of the consumer development, because that's kind of the purpose. So roundabout way, just discussing if I go ahead and appoint the rest of the committees after the ballot, it pretty much replicates the executive committee. What thoughts and discussion on that? Bueller.
So I remember the ballot being super long, and I don't even remember who I voted for part of it. But Julie, have you like reached out to everybody that was, I guess, is nominated the appropriate word? Either they signed themselves up or somebody else voted for them. Have they all been notified and said, "Are you interested?"
No, we haven't yet, because this executive committee hold up and open meetings and having a discussion this way, so haven't moved on past executive committee.
Well, and the appointments can be done based on policy and whatnot. I mean, that doesn't have to happen during an open meeting. I was just looking for feedback, because based on the vote, there were one or two that a different state agency person could be represented. So it doesn't necessarily change the huge component of it, but when we're considering the big picture, majority of the committees ended up being the same as the executive committee. So in the discussions of that and the possibility of membership changing, does the executive committee feel like I should just go ahead and just send out that list when it's pretty much duplicating the executive committee, maybe plus or minus one? Because the way our policy is written, we're capped at 5 for state plan. We're capped at 5 for just went blank.
I guess I would like to see us have committees that include more than just the 5 of us or whatever.
Yeah.
I think it would be nice to have different voices on different committees. Like I have no interest in serving the state agency role for every single committee, nor do I probably have the time to give. So I guess I would just like to see everybody have an opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, and that was also my concern, is that, there's the state agency representation, and yes, you kind of have to be there, but at the same time, having reoccurring monthly meetings for this committee or that committee and whatnot, that becomes a lot for anybody, consumer member or agency member.
Correct.
So yes, I can randomly appoint people, but we haven't exactly had that discussion, roles and responsibilities with our current membership to say, hey, guess what? we want participation on all these levels. And so if that's something in the interim that Julie and I can be reaching out to people and having many discussions with, sure, if that's what you guys think maybe we should do, or if we table it to December where we have those discussions.
Yeah, and we've had people volunteer in the past. I guess my question is, are we no longer going to take people who want to volunteer, who want to serve and have an interest, versus the voting and appointing thing?
Well, that's where we'll have to look. I mean, I think that the volunteering is a big part, and I found some really good language that says, the expectations and roles and responsibilities if you must serve on at least one committee or something like that. And so volunteering, we could educate that is in the form of self-nominating, and then that makes us aware that this person wants to participate, and then those appointments can be made.
I think it's a bylaws change, I think, again, to look at that, of how people can volunteer to serve. But in the
We can take
interim,
volunteers when they're still appointed. So, I mean,
well, yeah.
they'll do-
Question, can't we just, what would people think about, could we just like put aside some time at our December meeting to ask people to go join a little round table for each committee, and have some discussion, and then we could just ask for volunteers, and Brittany, you could appoint them until our bylaws get fixed up?
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was
Yeah.
going for. Thank you for summing it up. I just wanted to kind of get feedback because I don't like the idea of blind appointing, and I don't, doing the vote was kind of a throw it together because of how we kind of ended in the last meeting, and to at least have the ability to be transparent if need be, because it didn't happen in-house during a meeting.
We can put time on our agenda. Good idea to do that, to do some group work on that.
Yeah, I like the idea of people volunteering. Then it means it's something they're interested in, and hopefully they'll be willing to show up for and contribute.
So in the interim, I guess so Veronica, would you be willing to make a motion, or Kim, you have your hand up, sorry.
I'm sorry, I just had a question, as long as we're talking about bylaws and rules and things. If some of us state agency people are not able to attend, should we be sending a designee in our place?
That was on my list of things with Cheryl. It's a much longer list than she was able to answer. From all the information I have is we can't have proxy votes.
Okay, I'm only asking, and this is probably going forward, but the Interagency Coordinating Council is also an appointed position with Title V representation, and it's always on the same day. And so I want to make sure that I am doing due diligence to both committees, but I literally can't be in two places at once.
Is it the third Thursday? So when look at 2023, should we change it to a week earlier? Or
It's the
something?
second Thursday of the month. So like December, I was probably gonna have to send the assistant CSHCN director person to one of the meetings. And I'll have to decide which one based upon the agendas would be easier for her to follow. So, but if we're gonna be discussing our roles and responsibilities going forward in December, then obviously I need to make it a point to be at this meeting. So just something to throw out there as we're looking at these different appointments and things. We want to make sure that we're doing our committees justice. So there's that conflict.
Okay.
I think that was a great point. The proxy thing, I know that I found, but sending somebody for other meetings, Julie, the information part, Julie, we touched on maybe templating this is what my agency's been doing and how it affects, people that the council are representing and advocating for, type of thing. But that thing, the language does say you can send a designee, but there are no proxy votes.
Yeah, so they could come for you, just couldn't vote for you.
They
'cause
just
they
can't
don't-
vote
They're
if
not
we're
the
doing it business.
it's supposed to be the decision maker of the entity.
Okay.
So okay. So that
This is Veronica. I make a motion that that at a December meeting, we open the floor to volunteers for all committees, encouraging everyone to participate on at least one. Based on the volunteer, Brittany shall appoint members to the committees. Did that work for you, Brittany?
That works perfectly. Thank you. I just wanted to because our policy doesn't say when we have these elections necessarily. It is supposed to be within the annual, which ended. I just don't want it to look bad. I want it to say yes. So thank you very much. Is there anybody that would be willing to second that?
I was second.
Okay. Cheryl Beard seconds. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Since Veronica did mention these extra roundtables and we usually are pretty limited for time, do we want to broach the topic of possibility of meeting for an afternoon prior to the
or
day
do
splitting it?
8, 9 a.m. Thursday to longer for, extend it 2-3 hours on the day if we can. What's your guys' thoughts?
Well, I wasn't thinking anything like super overwhelming for folks. I don't want them to be scared to volunteer for a committee and then be like, oh no, I have to give up another day. So
Oh, gosh.
and I was just thinking kind of basic to start, and then maybe groups could meet on their own once the committees are established.
And I was basing it off of that we had also talked about possibility of Cheryl or sharing information and doing kind of roles and responsibilities, kind of the goal of the council, kind of council orientation, but as a whole. And so historically, we kind of squeeze it in as it is. So if we're going to do something extra and more formal, and then I was just totally hanging you out to dry.
Do you think for December we could extend it an hour each way? Cheryl, I know, was gonna maybe give us an hour, and we start at 9 and go to 4, and I just don't know if people can get it in their calendars for a month from now, an extra day or half day. If you can, that's great, and I can send out a meeting or a message to the council and ask for feedback on that, what works better.
And then I keep forgetting that December 8th is literally right around the corner.
Yes.
But that was brought up because we do have some that come overnight, and then there's some that try and do the same day travel. So there's going to be positives and negatives both ways, as well as Trevor's expressed issues with transportation that early, and supports and whatnot. So there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. And if in the future, if we needed to extend, if we're already having people come overnight and helping facilitate that overnight, then doing a late afternoon and a like 2/3 day the next day or something.
I think moving forward, we can ask that. I just don't know if we can swing it in a month for this one in particular, but we can ask about it moving forward into 2023 to add that extra time.
Do we want to try and do 10 to 4 for sure?
Well, we could try 9 to 4.
9 to 4 and see, just to give us that time. We can always adjourn early if that's the case.
I'll put that out to the members and just say we have a lot to do. So let's see what we can get done.
Folks, I gotta run. I'm overdue for another meeting.
Yes,
Is there anything else you need me for?
I think we can adjourn if you guys are all okay.
In the interim, yeah, I have some markups and for policy stuff, and we'll send it out and ask for your guys' feedback. And at the same time, if there's anything that you guys look at or recognize, in addition to the bylaws subcommittee, we'll work on that, but then it'll have to come back to executive committee, and all of which hopefully before December.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I'll save this recording and then do a notes transcript too. So thank you very much for your time today.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.